But now I don't see those cobbles and curbs. I don't hear the blues anymore.
Rough Trade is giving away a third of the first 3 months of the Rough Trade Club plus new music membership exclusively to 101 Part-Time Jobs listeners. Become a member of Rough Trade Club New Music and you'll receive the Rough Trade Album of the Month straight to your door every month on exclusive vinyl pressing with exclusive bonus material. Club members have received exclusive pressings of albums from Sufjan Stevens, Sprints, The Last Dinner Party, Julie Byrne, and Over Mono, just to name a few, this past year alone. Sign up using the promo code CLUB101POD and you'll get the Rough Trade Album of the Month, English Teacher's excellent debut album, This Could Be Texas, on exclusive Galaxy Gold for a third of the usual price. Here's English Teacher on a recent episode of 101.
How many opportunities do you get to write a debut album and have all of this, sport behind us? I don't know. I really like the idea of holding the bar as being like classic songs.
You only get one shot at a debut.
Don't want the album of the month but still want all the benefits? Sign up to the standard tier using Club 101 Pod and you'll still get the first month free. You'll also get free shipping on all orders, 10% off the bar and on secondhand vinyl in store, and exclusive access to sold out Rough Trade events. So don't hang around. Go to roughtrade.com/club and sign up with the code CLUB101POD. That's CLUB101POD and claim money off the album of the month, English Teachers This Could Be Texas, today. This offer's available to UK residents only. Do you play in bands? I did for the longest time. And I wish that I knew that DistroKid was a thing. I don't even think it existed back then. DistroKid makes music distribution fun and easy with unlimited uploads, and artists keep 100% of your royalties and earnings. 1 million plus artists rely on DistroKid to get their music on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, TikTok, Tidal, Instagram, and all the major streaming services. When you get DistroKid, you can see a DistroKid bank and withdraw your earnings. You get notified when you've earned royalties and you can withdraw via the app. And you can even check your streaming stats on Spotify and Apple. Get 30% off your first year on DistroKid by going to distrokid.com/VIP/101pod. 30% off for your first year. That's not bad. We know it's a tough world out there. Why don't you make it easier for yourself? And to get 30% off that free year as an artist, where you get 100% of your royalties and earnings, go to distrokid.com/VIP/101pod. All right, stay with me. I'll be right back after this.
Upgrade your business tools with an American Express Business Platinum Card. Unlock over $1,000 per year in statement credits on select purchases in categories including tech, wireless, and recruiting. And so big expenses can deliver big benefits, you'll also earn 1.5 times membership rewards points on single eligible purchases of $5,000 or more. Terms and points cap apply. Learn more at americanexpress.com/business-platinum. Amex Business Platinum. Built for business by American Express.
This episode is brought to you by Essentia. A better you starts with better hydration. Essentia is on a mission to inspire people to do what matters most. Their proprietary ionization process transforms water from any source into ionized alkaline water, providing water that's 99.9% pure with a pH of 9.5 or higher. Essentia overachieving H2O, the #1 ionized alkaline water. Shop now.
Alright, it's Giles. You're listening to 101 Part-Time Jobs, the podcast where I speak to bands and musicians about how they choose to live their lives. It's not easy being an independent musician in 2024, and I want to get down to the stories of how they make it work for themselves. On today's episode, I speak to Ben, one of the singers in BODEGA, excellent New York band, really steeped in art. Ben's a filmmaker alongside Nikki, who also sings in the band. They kind of managed to keep this real kind of pop tunage, this kind of, I'm trying to avoid saying pop sensibility, but it is a pop sensibility of these kind of more raw punk rock and roll songs. So yeah, right up my street. Love this band. They got a new record out called Our Brand, Could Be Your Life. Get it? out on the 12th of April. I'm sure it's going to be a ripper. They've put out 2 songs from it so far. Tarkovsky, which is playing beneath this. I had to go look up who that is, to be honest, so I can say I've learned something new today. And City is Taken. So here's my chat with Ben. I hope you learned something new. I sure did. I've got a laundry list of filmmakers I need to go check out and writers that I'm going to educate and inform myself. Maybe you'll do the same. Cheers for listening to the show. If you want to subscribe, please do. We got 2 guests every week coming on the show. And right now, my cat, who was just beautifully asleep across my lap, has jumped off. So see you later, Mr. Pickles. We have just announced, and I say we because I've just got 2 people on board for 101, Olivia Swash, who's been editing recent episodes, and Nick, who's a brilliant videographer. We've just announced these live episodes. They're all in London. We got ones with Feeder, While She Sleeps, The Staves, and Bob Villan. Most of them at Signature Brew. Bob Villan is at Bush Hall. You can find all those dates at 101parttimejobs.com/live. They're all happening in the next 5 or 6 weeks. So if you're free, if you're in London, come join us. Shout out to 2000 Trees, our excellent sponsors. You'll be hearing from them later on in the show, but you can go to 2000trees.co.uk and pick up your ticket. And also go check out Ampolo. They're a free app from the App Store that you can learn your instrument on, whether you're playing guitar, bass, or drums, or you're singing along. It lets you demix it. Here's Rebecca from Ampolo to explain a little bit more.
Introducing Ampolo, the new app for musicians. Using AI stem separation, play along to any song, improving your practice and performance. Record audio or video and connect with musicians all over the world. Collaborating and creating together. Think Google Docs meets TikTok, but for musicians. There's a huge range of video and audio editing tools, and the best part, it's free. Download today and make your mark. Ampolo, made for music.
All right, we're getting there. It's been a long week. You know what I mean? Here's Ben from Bodega on 101 Part-Time Jobs. Cheers for listening. I hope you dig it. 101 Part-Time Jobs. I didn't realize it for so long, but now I think back to like building ramps with my friends, bike ramps or skate ramps, building tree houses, getting really excited about these projects. You know, the first time I got a camera, like a handheld camera, and Jackass was like the biggest zeitgeist there is for people our age. Yeah. When did you pick up a camera?
Honestly, I was making like little cheap Jackass inspired things when I was a kid. It's funny you brought that up. I think that is the first time I used a camera. I remember doing like a stunt. I grew up in Columbia, South Carolina. I have no idea if you know where that is. Mm-hmm. It's in the...
Yeah, sort of.
Yeah, so it's like in the American South. Pretty, not a whole lot happens there. We had like a good hardcore scene. That was about it. And, or actually, do you know who...
That's pretty...
Do you know who Toro Imoa is?
Yeah, kind of pop stuff. And you went to high school together?
Wow, you know that? No, we didn't go to high school together. He was in my rival high school. So
okay,
we ended up going to college together and at University of South Carolina. And I there would always be like battle of the bands and stuff. And his band was always the cool band. He had this like kind of like Modest Mousy kind of band called The Heist and the Accomplice, which I like. Somebody should reissue those records. Like, I wish I still had them because they're amazing. But
albums?
Yeah, he had 3 albums before Tori Moi, and it was like like a really bitchin' rock band. But yeah, I mean, it could be nostalgia covering it, but you know.
So if Tori Moi's record or his friends and what they were doing, if there was that kind of Modest Mouse indie rock thing, were you more into hardcore, more into punk?
I was sort of, but also the high school band I was into was really schizophrenic. You're gonna laugh. So we were called Division by Zero, and the concept was if you divide anything by 0 in a calculator, it says undefined, right? So our genre was undefined. So we'd like our one like signature song would have these like indie-ish like sort of like Franz Ferdinand like disco verses. But then the chorus would become a hardcore breakdown with like double kick and screaming and stuff. It sounded like one from Metallica. Like, and like we would play with these older bands and they'd be like, this is so like tasteless. Like you can't combine like post-punk and metal. But they're like, it's kind of genius because like no one over the age of like 15 would do this, you know?
Yeah, and there's no rules. I mean, hey, you were art rocker before you even knew it.
Yeah. I mean, when I look back on it, it's like, yeah, it's kind of cool because we didn't like have rules in that way. But there's some pretty crappy stuff then too. I mean, I was the drummer / lyricist. I didn't know I could sing at the time, and I'd never tried. So I was like, but I always wanted to be the leader anyway. So I would do like the arrangements and write the lyrics and stuff. But.
I think there's something to say about singers who used to be drummers because it's groovy.
Yeah,
it's groove.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Were you the person who was booking the shows and making the flyers, going out to random people and places and saying, "Hey, listen to us. Hey, can we play with you? Can we play at your venue?"
Yeah. I was definitely, maybe the most into it, although probably the least talented at the time in the band as well. Yeah.
Mate, exactly the same. Exactly the same.
Yeah, I mean, I think of vocals as like writing songs as like drum parts, like da 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 da. Yeah, there is something formative about being the drummer in a band. I don't know. It's weird that
it's the hook.
Yeah, it's also like I think I had like when I first moved to Brooklyn too. I was playing drums in bands, and there's always like when you're drumming and you're just kind of like laying down the backbeat and you're thinking like, I really wish like this kind of thing was happening, but it's not my place to say, It's a very like formative experience, I guess. Yeah.
So did you learn at like that kind of high school age? Did you get to that kind of moment where you're like, okay, we've played a bunch of gigs that we sorted out ourselves. This is way more fun than most of what other people we know are doing, and then you kind of get a bit of the smell of the pizza, the taste of the pie, where you're like, all right, well, fucking no one else is going to do it. Like we are in control of our own fun. Yeah,
that's right. I mean, I had like, there's not much of a scene happening at all in South Carolina. So like, there was like, I say hardcore and there were good hardcore bands like Stretch Armstrong. I don't know if you ever heard them, but a lot of it.
Yeah, they like kind of more pop punk stuff?
No, like straight up like crew style, like hardcore stuff, but like Christian hardcore, which is, it's the American South. So you get this weird like crossover where it's like brutal, but the lyrics are like super positive. But the version of punk rock we got was so suburban and like in the early 2000s, like really tainted with that crappy like emo, screamo, mall rock kind of stuff. That I just had to get the hell out of there. And like, even like if any band toured that I want to see, I would have to go to Atlanta or sometimes Washington, D.C. or Charlotte if I was lucky, which is only like an hour away. But like, I mean, it sucks. Like when Bodega tours, we don't even play South Carolina. Like I would like to, but like there's no one there that would go. I don't even think like the high school version of me would have any idea who Bodega is. You know what I mean?
That's funny. I mean, the States is so different to the UK or Europe in that, I mean, I'm sure it does happen. Maybe this is just my perception, but in the States, you hear about bands who will, I mean, Bodega might play to 500 people in New York City and then 30 people somewhere else in the country.
Yeah. It's exactly like that. The United States is so big. You have no idea what's going on there.
What was your first tour? What was your first touring experience?
The funniest, like my first like real taste of touring, this is a pretty funny story. It was the band before Bodega was called Bodega Bay. We did like a weekender thing down to Scranton, Pennsylvania, which is where like that Office, the American version of The Office is supposedly set. But it's like kind of middle of nowhere. And we go down there to play with a friend's band called Baby Erection, who was actually like this pretty good punk band from Scranton, Pennsylvania that I became good friends with at the time. And we go down and we're like, I'm not really sure why we're going all the way to Scranton, but we're down for the adventure. And we get there and there's like this pub with all the townies in there and they don't seem to like what we're doing at all. And we first start off our set we were like really into this Minutemen Wire kind of thing where we had maybe like 20 or so 30-second songs. And so the first bit of our set, we're just bombarding them with like 30 minutes of like, 40 songs or something. And they're all just like standing there looking at us like, what the hell is this? And then the second half of our set was when we would start like drone jamming. So we would do like, 3 songs in 90 minutes or whatever. I mean, we played for like an hour and a half, which was crazy for like these people had no idea who we were. And we were playing this one riff just over and over again. And like something about the hypnotic like repetition clearly won them over. And like people started like smashing beers and like moshing and stuff. And when I say people, I mean, there's like all 10 people in the bar or whatever. And it was great. And it was like a really formative experience for us. We're like, wow, we could really like, it taught us like the power of a long jam and like, wow, we can really whip up a crowd into a frenzy or whatever. But then it turned really dark. Like the guy who was singing the most, Nikki was in the band then, he like went and body checked her and was like, you whore. He was like saying like really sexist, scary stuff to her and then hopped on his like motorcycle and sped off. And then, it was a weird lesson. And then like this audience that was like so into us, like turned dark real quick. It ended up being a good night.
That's bizarre.
We went to this party afterwards and hung out with the band Baby Erection and met all these people. And it ended up being like a pretty cool night. The only other thing I really remember from the night was this guy. This is hilarious. He goes, hey, I really dig what you're doing. I'm a graphic designer, and if you ever want, I could maybe do some flyers or like LP art for you guys. And I was like, cool. All right. And he's like, yeah, let me show you my portfolio. I'm like, okay. And we're like at this suburban like keg style party, And he takes me to the couch and like in the living room, and he pulls out his he has like a binder with him, and it's all fan art of like the I guess I don't even know what you would call them, like the ska punk band Sublime. With like the Dalmatian and bongs and stuff like that. And it's literally like 50 pages of Sublime fan art. And he's like, I could do something like this for you guys. Like Bodega.
Sign him up.
Yeah, like Bodega on like a bong and a dog collar or whatever. I was like, okay, man, I'll give you a call.
Those formative experiences, those first trips. And it's funny that after years and years of touring that you remember that first tour, that first weekend, you remember that first conversation?
Yeah. It was fun.
Did you ever have, I often wonder this, like, coming from a background like yours where you were doing your own thing, you were kind of letting your freak flag fly a little bit from an early age, you moved to a bigger city. Did you ever like knock yourself off of that path of individuality? Did you ever kind of psych yourself out and start thinking, oh, what are other people doing? Should I care about that?
Not really. I mean, I've always been like, I'm lucky in that when I was like 15, I already knew what I wanted to do. I want to direct films and I want to be in a rock and roll band. And I've been pretty stubborn about both of those goals, even when the whole world said no. I was in bands. Bodega really didn't start getting a lot of attention until I was like almost 30. So and it never bothered me. It's like, I know what we're doing is cool.
How old were you when you formed, when you went like Bodega Bay? How old were you when that formed?
23. So it was a good 7 years or so with like just us playing to our friends every weekend,
And pretty prolific songwriting, gigging.
Yeah. I mean, it was more, so I'm a filmmaker as well. I don't know if you know that. So I was always like,
yeah.
Like the members of Bodega Bay were not necessarily musicians. I had been playing in a bunch of like dude bands where it's like people who are pretty good at their instruments. And I was kind of bored with that. And I decided I just want to start a band that was fun with my friends. And we were pretty bad. Like, I was like the most competent musician in the band for the longest time. And that's not saying much. I'd be people who like literally didn't know what a major scale is and that the 2 and the 4 are the backbeat, but there were people who were like really interesting people that were like making art and were sort of interested in literary things or cinematic things. And so we were kind of like a performance art troupe, and we were very like anti rock and roll. But at the same time, I've always been sort of like a pop formalist. So there was like this, the real epiphany of Bodega was like actually playing with people that like are super interested in music as music, but keeping the same sort of philosophical backbone of Bodega Bay. Now we're musical and, hopefully I'm a much better musician now, but it really started out as being like this anti rock and roll kind of thing.
The first Bodega song that I really fell in love with is Charlie.
Oh, wow.
And my stepdad texted me and he was like, you're going to fucking love this, because he loves Replacements. When I was 18, he gave me a stack of Replacement CDs. It took me years to get through. And there's something real Paul Westerberg, and that band. I don't know if you've read that book Trouble Boys.
I did. I read that pretty recently.
It's awesome, because it is like, it's sad, of course, because like getting wasted all the time, no good for nobody, right? But I mean, that kind of philosophy of not having like a structured or musically background. I mean, I've just got this is totally like my opinion, but I just think like people are going to make better art if they don't know what art is supposed to be.
Yeah, I think there's something to that. I mean, I came at songwriting from, like, I was obsessed with Godard, right? The filmmaker. And I like his approach where it's, his movies are sort of like anti-movies. They don't really have characters or plots. He just sort of puts whatever he's thinking that morning, he clearly just puts into the film. And I was like, what? It's not really, I mean, I know there is now music like that, but at the time I thought that was my in. I could make music like that. And, I studied philosophy in college, so I was super into philosophy too. So I was like, I want to make philosophical music, but in a fun way.
Why not?
Like comedy is supposed to be a big part of our band. So, but I know what you mean. There's like a naive approach to the band, and I think most of my favorite stuff has like that naivete. I mean, that's why I prefer like early Beatles to like the psychedelic. Sprawling stuff later on, because I like that joyful feeling of like amphetamine up boys just like thrashing out these like perfect pop songs,
Yeah, and that's it. When there's like chaos and a bit of pop, it's like that's jams. I mean, making film, when you moved to New York City and becoming a filmmaker, and you made that film in 2020. That was called PVT Chat, and that did pretty well.
Yeah,
I haven't seen it, but it looks amazing, and it looks like something that you'd click onto Netflix and be like, "Oh, this looks great! Awesome! Next 2 hours, great."
Yeah, I mean,
what's the story behind that?
Well, so like I got to backtrack a little bit just to tell you that. So right when I graduated from college, I was like trying to figure out what I was going to do. I was selling tickets to comedy shows in Times Square, which is a weird job. I'd stand out there for like 8 hours and just get rejected from everyone. Like, hey, you like comedy? And they're like, fuck off.
And you're on commission?
Yeah, exactly. And I was like, you know what? I read that the book Our Band Could Be Your Life, and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna make an album this summer by myself. So I did this ritual where I put up my bed. My mattress was on the floor, and I set up a drum set in there. And I was like, I'm not allowed to sleep in my bed. I'm gonna have to sleep on the floor until I finish this album. And I did this like this sort of like DIY album. And then, I'm gonna fast forward a little bit, but like 6 months later, we did like a release show, and like nothing happened of it. I was thinking, oh, we're gonna get all these great reviews, and I'll go on tour, blah blah. Nothing happened of it. So, but I'm like a project oriented person. So then I was like, well, now what do I do? And then I was like, okay, I'm gonna make a film. So then I worked as an assistant to this director, which is different role on set than assistant director. All film people know this. Like the assistant director is the one that controls the time on the set. It's like, hey, we have 30 minutes to do this shot. We have 10 minutes to do this shot. We have 30 minutes for this break, blah, blah, blah. I thought that's what I was going to be doing. And I read all these books about assistant directing, but no, I was the assistant to the director, which means it's like getting the director his coffee, right? So I was working on this like low budget movie called Privacy. That was sort of like a Rear Window remake, like B movie kind of thing, straight to DVD. And I was like watching how they do it, and like, okay, like if you're going to shoot one scene, you cover it from 3 different angles, and then you'll cut the best bits together later. And I was watching all this, and I was like, I could do this. I can make my own movie. So when I was 22, I directed a feature film called Annunciation, super low budget with, a bunch of my friends, just like all shot like handheld on the streets. And it was the same story as my first album. I thought, wow, this is going to go to Cannes. It's going to revolutionize American cinema, blah, blah, blah. This is French New Wave, but for the 2010s. And, you know, it really captures the city in a poetic way. Da, da, da. Not even my friends could sit through it. I mean, it was a complete disaster. But I wasn't deterred. I still think that movie's kind of interesting. I have it up for free if anybody wants to see it on Vimeo. And I made another movie after that. So Private Chat actually was my third full-length movie. And, you know, I don't know, just keep sticking to things. I feel like the best way to learn is to just do stuff, you know?
Yeah. I think I'm with you. That's my philosophy of life. You know, it's like that autodidactic nature. I mean, I often think about a lot of the jobs that I've worked and how they basically serve someone else's purpose. And there's not a lot of room for creativity in like realistically like most jobs.
Yeah, that's true.
And that's something that I think is like I think that's like a battle for a lot of people.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, like my main line of work right around that time for like a good like 5-6 years is I was working at a film school, New York Film Academy, which is like, I mean, if anybody who works there hears this, I don't even think they would disagree with me. It's kind of like a pyramid scheme school where they like tuition is so insane. It's like $50,000 a semester or something. And they kind of accept anybody, but what you get is sort of this amazing package. Like the day you first, like most film schools are going to be like, okay, before you touch a camera, you need to learn how to storyboard. You need to learn what montage is. You need to, you know, study great films, blah, blah. At New York Film Academy, your very first day, they're like, okay, here's a 4K red camera package. Here are like the best lens in the world. Here's a dolly. Here's like, you know, here's like $100,000 worth of fancy equipment. Like go out and make like a 1-minute short film. So you get access to amazing stuff there. But it's like, you know, you're being taught by like idiots like me. So, and the people that work there get paid like, basically like a fast food wage kind of thing, you know, but I loved working there though, because I was in the edit lab for like most of the time and I would just be doing my own thing. There was this movie I made called The Lion's Den. I would be in there editing. I would be writing Bodega songs. Like most of Endless Scroll was written at New York Film Academy, just like sitting in there. And my boss would be like, hey, are you going to like do this thing? I'm like, yeah, but in like 30 minutes, I'm like on a good flow right now.
Yeah. Getting away with it.
Yeah. And he was cool with it, you know?
Was that one of your first bits that you could work at, that you're getting paid and you can have like free time for yourself? Because most jobs in London, New York City, big cities, these like a lot of jobs like service, it's like they're time sucking. They like really drain the time out of the clock.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, honestly, you know what the best job I ever had was for time was all throughout high school and my first 2 years of college, I was delivering pizzas. And that is an amazing job for a musician because I got to listen to music for like 8 hours a day. And I was a big pothead at the time. So I was just driving around, smoking weed, listening to music. And I was so bad. Like I would get to somebody's house and it'd be like in the middle of a track. I'd be like, I want to hear the end of this track. So I would do a couple laps around the cul-de-sac.
Fuck yeah.
Fuck yeah. Like I really gave me
That's funny.
And at the time when I was in college, I was at the college radio station. So, you know, this is pre-streaming services, right? So, but they had like a closet with like every CD. So I'd be like, oh, I want to check out this band. Like, oh, I've never really listened to this band. And I would take like 20 of their CDs and just like, you know, drive around and listen to them and sort of educate myself.
Fuck yeah. Any job that you can do that, you're like, oh, I haven't listened to Led Zeppelin before. It's like today I'm going to listen to Led Zepp's back catalog. Any job that you can do that is a fucking gift.
Yeah, it's weird. Like I saw the Cure this summer, and I remember I had like a month where I just like binged. Because I don't know if you remember, but like they reissued all the first 8 Cure albums, or I think it was just the first up to 7 at the time. I don't know why I remember that so well, but with like the double disc, and the whole second disc had all the you know, the B-sides and the demos and rehearsals and stuff like that. And I spent that whole month just like studying those first 7 reissues. And I saw The Cure this summer, and it was weird. Like some of those songs, like I can like smell the pizza.
Yeah,
It's amazing.
That's
how
so
things
funny.
are that.
And they're great live, aren't they? Now
They're amazing band. Yeah. I mean,
That's-
I
I mean,
love
they've got
it
an
takes
amazing-
like 4 hours, and I love the marathon
Fucking-
show.
that's so rad.
Yeah.
Hey, did you keep your sense of humor? Did you ever get like? I mean, I don't ever want to be a bummer, but it's like realistic, right? It's like, did you like keep your enthusiasm, the enthusiasm through like the stony, cold Monday mornings when you're skint and like the city is giving you the finger like every day? How like have you kept your sense of humor? I mean, you're clearly someone who likes to have fun and stubborn fun, like you say, and like put your best foot forward.
I mean, like everyone, there's hard days, but what are you gonna do? You got to keep trucking forward. I've been lucky pretty recently. Like Private Chat seems like it's kind of found an audience. There's at least a small audience out there that digs what Bodega's doing. So it's like, I don't know. I have a film in the works right now. Like, just keep on trucking. You know, it's like, I think like I learned a long time ago that I'm not happy with how people like whether you get like a bad review or a good review. It doesn't really, it's not going to affect my happiness. The only thing that makes me happy is working on stuff that I like, right? So it's like, if I have a day like editing a film or a day working on a script or a day working on a song or a day in the studio, that's the art life. That's the life I want to be living. And so the goal is really to just find enough financial stability to live the art life. And I'm in a place right now, like with our new, you know, how things are going with the band and our new label, that at least right now, I don't have to work a 9 to 5. And so I'm living the dream right now, you know, like my day today is going to be like making demos and, you know, plotting out our, you know, what we're going to do this year tour wise and stuff like that, choosing, you know, who our supports are going to be, you know, that's the dream. I'm like, if ever I'm having a bad day, and there are many times where you have bad days and you're burnt out or whatever, I have to pinch myself and be like, young Ben would look at where you are right now and be like, holy shit, you made it. Because the grass is always greener on the other side. I mean, I won't name any names, but we've toured with bands that I would consider like canonical, pretty much like classic bands, right? Bands that I was listening to when I was delivering pizzas. And even they are dissatisfied. They're like, how come we're not at the big, why don't we have the bigger font at the festival? You know, compared to these bands. Yeah. The grass is always going to be fucking greener. And you gotta remind yourself sometimes, like, none of that shit really matters at all. It just really doesn't matter.
101. The founder of Panasonic once said,
"We can lead more meaningful and constructive lives
through the pursuit of activities that will ensure
a better today than yesterday,
a better tomorrow than today."
Panasonic is committed to creating a greener,
more equitable future for everyone.
Explore Panasonic Green Impact
at na.panasonic.com/green impact.
2000 Trees Festival supports this show, the best medium-sized independent festival in the UK. I'm stoked to have a sponsor that is an independent festival. They're really cool. They started sponsoring the show a few years ago, and hey, to be completely honest, and you know, if you're listening to this, I want this to be like the most transparent show ever. They came up to me and they were like, can we sponsor your show? And I was like, yeah. I was like, how much do you want? I was like, 20 quid. And since then, we've basically been supporting each other. They've got an amazing festival happening this July. The Gaslight Anthem and the Chats are headlining. Manchester Orchestra's playing. A whole raft of great bands from hardcore to indie to, you know, folk artists are playing as well. Who else? I'm just looking at the lineup. It's killer. Hot Mulligan, Creeper, Better Lovers, Crawlers, Angel Dust, Press Club, Into It, Over It, Calvin Louise. If you want to head to 2000 Trees, it's in Cheltenham. It's just a few hours away from London on the train. It's probably the best British independent festival you can actually go to. 2000trees.co.uk. Get your tickets now. 20% off using the voucher code 101pod. Now's your chance. I gotta say, you'd be pretty dumb to like all of these bands, be available on the day, be accessible to go. And actually, that is a great point. They're a really accessible festival. So 2000 Trees, really brilliant place to go. Highly recommend it. Can't recommend it enough. 2000trees.co.uk. Full transparency. Yes, they're our sponsor, but it is my favourite festival in the UK. So 2000trees.co.uk. Pick up your ticket. Now, back to Ben from Bodega. I mean, Chrysalis Records is the label that the new record is coming out on, and legendary label that seems to be again a stubborn record label in a sense, right? Because of the amount of the different types of sounds. I'm not sure if Joni Mitchell put out records on them, but looking at the list now, I mean, Marika Hackman, who I'm not sure if you heard, she's fucking awesome. I mean, Debbie Harry. Fucking loads of great stuff. Billy Idol. Billy Idol and Bodega, that would be a good combo, wouldn't it?
That would be funny.
Does that have that knock-on effect where you're like, cool? Does it change anything about the way you think about writing songs for Bodega?
Not really. Because whether or not I'm a legend of my own time, I'm a legend in my own mind.
Here we go.
Yeah. Doesn't everyone think of themselves that way? I don't know. It's funny because this new record is actually it's doing a lot of my older songs from Bodega Bay, redoing them because I had wanted to. We've been slipping those songs into our set list for a while because I still think they're great songs, and it dawned on me and Nikki that we should make a record kind of honoring the first era of our band, but play it with better musicianship. And it's funny because back then we thought of ourselves as a prog rock band. We would be doing Cultural Consumer parts 1 through 5. You know what I mean? It's like a joke, they're it's not exactly prog rock, but so I think it's fitting that we're on Chrysalis now. And it's funny. Nobody at Chrysalis now seems to love their prog past. I'm like, oh, we should do a prog record. And they're like, please don't.
It's funny. I even feel a bit guilty for asking about the record label thing because I feel it being confined by the idea of a record label. That's not really what it's about. It's about doing your art, and if you can partner up with a company who you can have a cool relationship with, then that's the magic, isn't it? Yeah, labels are a big important part of the scene. Our first label, What's Your Rupture? Putting out music with them was just as big for us at the time, and their roster was to be if some kid is getting into new punk or new garage rock or whatever, and they're clicking around the internet and they find out about What's Your Rupture. I'm proud to be part of that label's history. Mm-hmm. You have amazing bands like Parquet Courts, right. Fucked Up, Ice Age, Tyvek, Royal Headache. Yeah. Oh my God, Royal Headache. Mm-hmm. Have you heard that new one, Finnegan's Wake? That new band with Shogun
in. It's so good. Yeah.
It's so good. Yeah. It's so good. Do you those venues that you started playing, were those sort of independent venues? Are they still going? Are people running around in New York City and Brooklyn trying to find new spots? Do they get shut down?
Yeah, New York is always changing, right? It's funny, actually, the music video we're about to put out in maybe 2 weeks, that we have this track called City Is Taken. And the concept of the video is Nikki performing in front of all these venues from New York City's current last decade and total past, classic venues like Max Kansas City and stuff like that. But it's sort of, because her song is about gentrification, so it's sort of in real time, almost like a documentary showing what the city looks like now. So, where all these clubs used to be, you see Chipotle's and Chase Banks and stuff like that. But it's also sort of like a loving homage to all the places that we came out playing. The opening shot is in front of this place that's no longer there, called Goodbye Blue Monday, which is the first rock place I ever played in New York, which they had no curation. Like anybody could play there. It's basically like a permanent open mic kind of thing. But it was a cool spot, and it was like very I think it was pretty hip spot, and it was like to be able to play somewhere that wasn't just like a cheesy tourist bar with cover bands in Manhattan, that was like a big deal for like a 19-year-old or whatever. And I mean, like a lot of the so-called DIY Brooklyn stuff, unfortunately, has been just totally priced out, and the whole Williamsburg scene is kind of gone. But there's still like a strong, thriving punk scene and rock scene in New York, like there always will be. It's just different. It changes.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier how that Azarad, it's Mike Azarad who wrote Our Band Could Be Your Life, isn't it? The new record, Our Brand Could Be Your Life. I mean, Bodega has been so interesting because your imagery, where if I was to try and sit down and write a song about like basically my relationship with capitalism, it would come out like really on the nose in a way that I wouldn't like about it. And I think Bodega's fascinating because you've been able to really kind of hit things on the nose without kind of having that like that horrible kind of funny bone feeling when something's too on the nose. And that like relationship with, I mean, ATM imagery has kind of been with you ever since I learned about you. Statuette on the console. I mean, the kind of imagery. I mean, even like the photos, a lot of your photos are on that boat between the Statue of Liberty and Manhattan, right? So you're between places. And I find that imagery really fascinating that you've been able to like go for it and make it say what you mean what you say, but it remain fun. It's a real kind of fascinating kind of juxtaposition there.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough game to make critical art and not. There's a fine line between art and propaganda. You know what I mean? And I feel like I can name certain bands that I would say just do straight propaganda, and I think do it well. I don't want to say propaganda is bad. I mean, like I like a lot of like art that I would consider propaganda, like a lot of like
sloganism.
Yeah,
would you consider sloganism's propaganda?
Yeah, exactly. But like, I mean, even I think like some of the greatest punk bands of all time, like maybe like Crass or something like that. Like the whole point of their band is to sell you their messaging, right? And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think that's a total valid approach. That's not exactly been Bodega's approach, though. And like, for example, like I think we stick out from like a lot of newer bands. Will criticize, like, let's say the right. Let's criticize like what's happening with Trump and Brexit and things like that, and that's all perfectly good and valid. But I realize, and obviously those things need to be criticized. But my approach has been different. I'm more like maybe how Jello was in the Dead Kennedys, where I think it's too easy to just criticize the right because everyone in our audience, if you're listening to post-punk music, you're not on the right wing anyway. So like, who cares? You know what I mean? Like, it's more interesting to criticize the hypocrisies of the left and to criticize yourself. That's what Bodega Bay has always been about. When I was first saying, how did this happen? I'm not talking about, how did Trump get elected? Like, I'm talking about how did the complacency of people like me lead to this? You know what I mean? It's like it's a harsh self-critique, but it's supposed to be funny. I mean, in the same way that the Dead Kennedys were, it's like there's something hilarious about the truth always. And if your band's not funny, you're probably not telling the truth. But yeah,
that's interesting.
Yeah.
If you're not funny, then you're not telling the truth, because there is like, I often think about, last couple of months, I've been thinking a lot about, with my girlfriend or my friends or my family, we all know someone who has like an opinion always. I've never really been that person. I'm not like a highly opinionated person. And I'm thinking now, I think in a way I've maybe been scared to say what I think in the moment, because I know that in a week or 3 weeks or definitely 3 years that I'm going to think something else.
Yeah.
But I've been kind of going through this thing recently where I'm like, well, that's what I got now.
Yeah.
You know, it's, hey, sublime. That's what I got. So if you say it, like you like, what's the harm in saying that? I mean, and like that's kind of goes without saying. I don't mean anything out of ill will or malice, but it's like I think there's something really massively healthy about saying like what you think now, knowing that you'll probably think differently in the future.
That's extremely wise. I mean, that's why they're called records. Like a single track is supposed to be a record of a moment. I might, I think like I'm sure a lot of people say something in a track that they disagree with, but that's okay. Like a song doesn't. The problem is like I wish people thought more about songs, like how they think about like films or books, where you can have Shakespeare. Like for example, Shakespeare always gets attributed to quotes in like valedictorian speeches that he never said. His characters said them. When people say "to thine own self be true," Shakespeare didn't like go around saying that. He had a character, Polonius, say that in Hamlet. And if you look at the context of where Polonius said that in the play, it's a bit ironic. That character is like a blowhard. He's speaking in nothing but empty platitudes. So that's my long way of saying like, why couldn't I write a song that really embodies a point of view, and that particular point of view is true towards a certain aspect of the human experience, but it doesn't have to represent me always. Like we associate songs so much with their songwriters. But there's like little room for play though, Yeah, and the play is kind of where the cool stuff happens. Yeah, I mean, do you get worried? Do you get worried about that people will think like, oh, this person thinks that I'm like Ben's talking about Ben. Yeah, I mean, but they'd be right though. Of course, I'm talking about me. Everything I've ever said is me. But I'm talking about what you wisely said like 5 minutes ago. I think like people can change. I mean, I don't think there's anything I've said in any of my songs that I would disagree with. I'm just talking hypothetically now. I think. Yeah. Same. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, for example, if there was someone who wrote a song about drug use or wrote a song about hate or wrote something that was misogynistic in a pretty kind of low key way, because there's a lot of stuff out there, not you, but there is. I mean, Descendants. I mean, I can't really listen to Descendants much anymore because so much of that is they were like 15 years old when they wrote those songs. For real. Yeah. And I wonder if a lot of people as songwriters, you're like, well, okay, I have to leave that in the past. I can't let that change my decisions in the future. It's like Ian MacKaye being like followed around by the whole straight edge thing his whole life. I wrote that song when I was 16 years old. I wasn't even old enough to buy beer. You know what I mean? Hey, this is great. I feel like we could talk for a long time. I think 45 minutes is like a good length for these kinds of chats. Okay. So hey, thanks for being up for the talk. This is why I do this. Like, big fan of your band, and hearing these stories like really illustrates the whole picture for me. I've always been a big fan of profiles. Yeah. Thank you. This has been a super fun chat. When your time in New York City. What was the kind of like time? Did you ever kind of get into a scenario, like those scenarios where they're kind of like crossroad points where you're like, okay, if I don't do this now, I'm fucked. If I do this now, then I won't have the chance again. Have you had some of those kind of moments you can look back on where even at the time you knew it was like a big decision? Yeah, I think like when Bodega started, me and Nikki were super serious about it. And in a way that I think we realized like, hey, we're at this crossroads in our life. Like, I think she was 26 or 27. I was 29. And we're like, this is probably our last shot at like forming a great band. So let's do it right. And we like really worked on it. And it felt like a pivotal moment. But I remember like specifically for me, because my favorite New York band at the time was Parquet Courts. And I really looked up to them. And, saw them as sort of like the leaders of a particular scene that I wanted to be involved in. And then Austin came to one of our shows, and I remember afterwards he said, hey, I want to record you guys. And I kind of downplayed it and was like, okay, cool. Like, that'd be great. Let's do an album. But I remember walking home with Nikki that night, and I was like, this is our shot. We better make a good record. Like, not only is this going to be our band's first record? But we're getting to do it. That's a rare opportunity to get to do a record with like somebody that you really admire and can learn a lot from. And better not blow it.
Parquet Courts are one of those great bands that, and even like Teenage Fan Club before then, it's like these Teenage Cool Kids. Sorry,
yeah, I know what you meant.
It's Teenage Fan Club too, though. Teenage Fan Club too. but they're like those kinds of bands that like I just hope that we're able to keep finding those kinds of bands, and I hope the bands like that keep on kind of coming through the cracks and building their own foundations and, you know, excuse this horrible illustration, but like flourishing, right? Because bands like those, they become special, and they could have easily like not become special. They could have remained a underground curiosity, but they didn't for whatever reasons. And I like those kinds of bands, like Parquet Courts, give you hope for the future of rock and roll. So does Bodega.
Well, I mean, I have like a pretty optimistic point of view of like the audience, right? Like Kevin from What's Your Rupture told me this once, which I think is an amazing idea. Is that yes, the music industry sort of spoon feds and tells people what to like. That's true. It's always been that way, right? And that the groups that get biggest have often the biggest PR budgets and, you know, all the gatekeepers pulling things for them. And I've seen this. I've seen how the sausage is made. I've seen people talking about a particular buzz band like, okay, this is definitely going to be one of the biggest records of next year. And sure enough, when the record comes out, all these people that I would consider not like insiders, not people like movers and shakers in the scene and that are really actively involved in playing shows every night, just sort of like your average general public that just casually listens to music. Those are like the, you know, the bands that they're going to pay attention to. They're like, wow, I discovered this brand new band. They just came out of nowhere. And you can kind of get a little cynical and be like, oh, wow, you really just like are a sheep that bought into the marketing. But having said that, in order to get to that point, that band had to really pay their dues often, not always, but, and really kind of, you know, they've probably been grinding it out for 8 years before they got to that point. Right. But also that's the antithesis of what I was going to say. Kevin told me this thing. He said, he's like, I've seen many examples where, let's say a buzz band is chosen to maybe be one of the chosen bands of next year. And they have this big marketing budget and they're really shoved on everybody's throat. But the public can just say, no, I don't like this. And it might not take off. You know what I mean? Because at the end of the day, people have to like it. That's like the only, like no band gets big if people don't listen to it. It just doesn't happen. You know, like it could be whack according to me, but somebody out there is enjoying it. I promise you, you know? So like I truly believe that if you make something that's real and you like it, somebody out there is going to like it. Sort of like that saying, real, recognize real, you know, it's important to remember that, I think, to not be cynical and like, you know, just like humbly go about making stuff that you care about. And if people don't like it, well, maybe in 50 years they'll like it. You know, who's to say?
I think there is something really intuitive where you can hear on a record or seeing a band play, and there's something that like, it's like primal. You know, yeah, it's the songs, and yeah, it's like, you know, might like look like the groove and how the, you know, the body language you love, but there's something else at play there. You know, that's fucking cool. That's
you're talking about the X factor.
Define.
All great bands have an X factor, and what it is, we smell it, but we can't really articulate it. You just know it when somebody has it.
Yeah,
it's the magic of it.
Hey, what's the biggest fuck up that you've made at a job that you've worked at?
I used to busboy this Italian restaurant, and I got caught smoking pot on the job and got fired. That was embarrassing. The boss called me into his office. How did you get fired? The boss called me into his office, and he's like, "Are you stoned right now?" And I was like, "No." And he's like, "You can go ahead and leave your things here."
Hey, can I admit something to you that has been like hanging heavy on me? Last time you played the Moth Club, you did a residency for 2 days. Me and my girlfriend went 3 days. Yeah. Sorry. We were getting plied with beers, me and my girlfriend, by the PR. We were having a great time. We were rocking out. At the end, we were like, we'll go up and say hi. So we went upstairs to that room where there's like trophies around and bits and bobs. We had a nice time. And then on the bus on the way back, Eva, my girlfriend, she like opened up her bag and she'd swiped loads of trophies, like a peanut butter, a jam, and like a couple of your biscuits.
Wow.
And we were like, fuck. And we woke up the next day and like, you know, when you're hungover, but you feel good, you're like, that's that kind of weird kind of golden hue that you have when you're hungover. We had that apart from that one kind of needle of like, oh shit, like we just took a bunch of things, like that's not cool. What? You know, and like I'm part of the crew, you know, it's not cool that we did that. So it was like, okay, let's go back. And we went back around sound check and she waited outside and I came in. I was like, yeah, I'm interviewing the band. So I ran up and I saw you and I was just kind of making small talk with you, keeping your eye contact, but with my hands offloading the stolen goods back.
You guilty little school children. That's so funny. Wow.
But we made it right.
What were the trophies of? Like
Well, that place, it's the marching of the tin hats, right? Yeah. So it's like the old boys club. I don't know, fucking like shooting deer or some shit.
Yeah, I think you guys would have been fine not bringing it back, but you know, you had to do it for your own conscience.
Exactly. Okay, so there was Ben from Bodega. Quite a lengthy one. Didn't have so much time to edit. I'm sorry, I did tighten up those bits. I hope it was all right to listen to. If you don't agree, write it on a postcard and throw it in the Thames. I'm going to South by Southwest next week. If you're going, please let me know. Want to hang out, want to go see some good bands. So get in touch if you're going to South by Southwest and you want to do something together. Is this strange that I'm asking out into the ether? Maybe, but if you're listening to this, I consider you my friend, whether you like it or not. Cheers for listening. It's 101 Part-Time Jobs back next week with episodes with dry cleaning and... who's this guy? I love his record, but I always forget his name. He was in the Coral. Bill Ryder Jones. Bill Ryder Jones is coming on the show next Thursday. So come back. They've both got awesome records and interesting stories to boot. All right. See you soon. If you're in a band or if you're a musician, go on to DistroKid, where you can get 30% off your first year. Go to distrokid.com/VIP/101pod. And for that first year, you get 30% off. That's the fee. And then every royalty stream is all yours. You get 100% of the money. 1 million plus users are on DistroKid. There's no fucking around. DistroKid is the way to put out your music into the world in a legitimate and, you know, financial way. Isn't that what we're all trying to do? Have fun, be creative, and get paid something for it. DistroKid is the way to do that if you're an artist. distrokid.com/VIP/101pod and get 30% off your first year. All right, cheers for listening.
It is Ryan here, and I have a question for you. What do you do when you win? Like, are you a fist pumper, a woohooer, a hand clapper, a high fiver? I kind of like the high five, but if you want to hone in on those winning moves, check out Chumba Casino. At ChumbaCasino.com, choose from hundreds of social casino-style games for your chance to redeem serious cash prizes. There are new game releases weekly, plus free daily bonuses, so don't wait. Start having the most fun ever at ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.